Hello, Monday Sportive subscribers, and this is our Euro series, and I am pleased to welcome Adam from the Anglo-Italian podcast. Adam, welcome to Monday Sportive. I know you've been on before, but look, we're on a new format. We're live on YouTube.
Yeah, beautiful to see you guys join the World Wide Web, as they call it, on YouTube. But yeah, no, I'm very grateful for you to invite me even on to this kind of introduction to the Euros. I'm looking forward to the Euros. I don't know about yourself.
Absolutely, yeah, no, really am. Now the Premier League and the Football League's still going on, but now the Premier League is wrapped up. I think everyone's
Yeah.
looking forward to the Euros. Harry's been doing a great series. He's spoken to lots of people about lots of nations going to the Euros.
Mm.
Your Poland are going by the
Yes.
skin of their teeth. It was a bit of a bit hit and miss, but they're going, and that's the main thing, isn't it?
It is, it is. I think on reflection, when you look at it back, it's very fortuitous. We probably, I would definitely admit that we don't deserve to be there, by the virtue of just the way that the Euros has been panned out. We, if you'd asked me 10 years ago, would we have qualified? Probably not. It's just by the fact that UEFA have expanded the tournament. They've made it easier for the so-called smaller nations to qualify through the back route. Now, I think Poland were very fortuitous, as I say. We had a terrible campaign, started off under Fernando Santos. And yeah, a lot of the Polish supporters weren't happy at the way we were playing football, but more importantly, just there was no identity to that squad. And equally at the same time, Fernando Santos didn't kind of make himself loved by the supporters. He didn't attend the Polish games. He didn't really go and see the Polish national players in their respective clubs. So there was kind of this understanding that he didn't really invest himself too much. On top of that, Alex, I think we have to kind of allude to the fact that he was the highest paid European coach of all coaches
Wow.
at this tournament. Potentially, he was being paid 3.5 million, which even the Polish supporters are a bit bewildered, because we've never paid extensively for a coach to represent the Polish national team. So this was kind of a big deal. By the fact that we had a new president at the helm. He wanted to make a statement for the Poland national team. And by bringing in someone who had that reputation in Fernando Santos, who'd won the Euros, there was that expectation that he could maybe progress us to the next stage. But as I alluded to, the football was pretty drab, pretty terrible to watch. I watched the games in particular against Albania, for example, and we were dreadful. And that's not to tarnish Albania, because I think Albania will be the surprise package at the
Yeah.
Euros for sure. But overall, Poland very lucky, by the skin of her teeth, as you allude to. And yeah, I think the future is looking brighter under Michał Probierz, who is the new coach at the helm, and he's trying to introduce a bit more of a footballing philosophy, which is more pleasing to the eye, but I think it's going to restore some pride in the national squad as well as the supporters, because I think if you look at our efforts at the World Cup, it was laughable. Going into this campaign, terrible, so we are looking for something to just give us a bit more hope, and we haven't got an easy group either at the same time,
Oh,
Alex.
we will come on to that group, Adam, because
Mm.
it is. I mean, we like to brandish groups of death, but I mean, if you're going to do one on this tournament,
Yes.
I mean, it's pretty much it. We'll come on to the group in a moment, Adam.
Yeah.
But just to rewind very quickly, Fernando Santos. When you get managers like this coming in, sort of marquee managers who have done it
Mm.
before, especially when we look at national teams, it sometimes doesn't work because they don't really get that nation. And tell me, I mean,
Mm.
I'm not over familiar with Poland and how it ticks, but for my mind, when you look at Polish football from afar and you look at the league football in
Mm.
Poland, it is just all about passion, isn't it? It's wearing that shirt of the team you support. It's cheering them through thick and thin. We've seen in the Polish league that the fans of Polish football
Mm.
just simply adore their football, and
Yeah.
I'm sure you'll tell me that runs through to the national team. So if you haven't got a
Mm.
manager who buys into that Polish ethic, the way
Yeah.
you want to see football being played, it's not going to work, is it?
It's not. I think there was a lot of skepticism when the appointment was made, And I think there was a lot of remarks about whether he was worth the money that was being spent on him. So there was a lot of skepticism at the very beginning, but it wasn't helped by the fact that he didn't really kind of buy into what I suppose most Polish fans wanted, which was to look at the kind of broader talents that we have within the Polish National League, as well as the ones that are up and coming. So just quickly referring to our under kind of 18, 17 squads, they've been doing really well on the international stage. So we've got a really talented bunch of players, plus there's players that are, I suppose, dual nationalities now due to their parents moving on to different countries within Europe. And, they're being touted for the likes of Spain, for example, Germany, France. So we've got a huge abundance of talent pool, not just there, in England as well. There's huge situations where the Polish FA are trying to look at naturalising these players. And the big problem is how do we make sure that they're integrated and loved by the nation that they are adopted by as well, and transform to the next stage, I suppose. And that vision of being like a Lewandowski within the squad is definitely appealing. However, Lewandowski is once in a generation, and I suppose that's the big problem that Poland have, is that we've got a few aging players now, so there is a pathway potentially. And that's what the new coach had to do, really, is transition this squad, because Lewandowski, I think, for most supporters, it's a surprise to see him still competing and still being part of the national team, because the large assumption was that he would retire after the World Cup at Qatar. So, we've got that as the talismanic player within the squad. The problem has always been, have we got the squad to support him? There's also been that kind of conception of, actually, do we perform as well with Lewandowski in the squad and without him? So, I think there's a lot of different elements that feed into it. But back to Santos, he didn't really buy into the kind of what we expected him to deliver. I think most fans were of the opinion that he was there just for the money, and by the actions after it as well. I mean, it is quite tragic that he's getting paid a bonus for the fact that Poland have qualified to the Euros despite this all happening. No. And that's down to the stipulation in the contracts. Unfortunately, we were stupid enough to do that. So lots of caveats, but ultimately we have put it right. We've got someone that was part of the Polish national setup. He's bought into that kind of philosophy of he wants to restore that faith in the Polish national team. And you can see by the style of football, it has taken a while to adapt by all means. However, I feel much more confident that we're not going to embarrass ourselves at the international stage.
Yeah, it's a sort of sense of pride back in the national team, and that fantastic badge. I can't see it on your shirt, but it's always, whenever I see it,
it's down there.
Yeah, it's a beautiful badge, isn't it? Just we think of Poland, Adam. We think of vodka, sausages, and Lewandowski. That's what we think of when we think of Poland. Lewandowski, as we all know, is quite a phenomenal football player. He's been there, done it. He's won the trophies. He's certainly scored the goals. How does he sit with this current national team, or the players within that? Are they, and as a fan, and obviously, are you still happy to see Lewandowski in and around the squad, or do you feel it's time for, maybe a brave new Poland to sort of evolve from Lewandowski?
I'm glad that he's there in some respects, because I think we need someone of his qualities within the team setup. However, that's not to say that his kind of reputation doesn't kind of abide himself when it comes to the fact that there is a sense of arrogance within him. He does kind of want the very best. I think these kind of comments reminisce of the likes of Ronaldo, for example, who kind of has always kind of portrayed maybe this arrogance. And maybe that's just a mentality of, they've played at that level. They've kind of played with those players. They want to win every game, naturally. And, Lewandowski's mindset has always been that he wanted to represent the Polish national team and he wants to win things. But realistically, he needs a team that supports him. I've always been of the opinion that we need to maybe look at transitioning him for a number of years anyway. But look, I'm at that point where I think, and amongst a lot of the Polish national team supporters, they accept this is going to be potentially his last tournament. We should let him have his joy in that respect, and we probably will transition thereafter. The problem we'll have, Alex, though, is that we've got players like, for example, Arkadiusz Milik, who hasn't really performed of late for Juventus. Wojciech Szczesny has already declared that he won't be participating in the national squad after this tournament as well.
Oh, really?
So, there is a few positions that will need to be catered for thereafter. But as I alluded to, there is a really promising bunch of players coming through. For example, in Szczesny's positioning, we've got the likes of Marcin Bulka, who plays for Nice right now, ex-Chelsea goalkeeper. He's definitely looks like a successor. We've got Kamil Grabara, who is really doing well at Copenhagen in the Champions League. He's now going to transfer to Werder Bremen in the summer. So there's some promising players coming through the ranks. Up top is probably the question mark. I don't think necessarily you've got a Lewandowski or like-for-like replacement. However, Zielinski will still be there from obviously Napoli currently, but he's led to be moving to Inter Milan in the summer. So we've still got a staple of really good players across the pitch, and that's, we're forgetting about the likes of Jakub Kivor, who's had a kind of breakthrough season at Arsenal. Yeah. And, I'm still confident about what we're going to see in the future. But yeah, it's fair to say, look, this is the last shot for Lewandowski.
Yeah, and you mentioned a few names there, Adam. When we talk about Polish football players as individuals, there's been some great players. We've seen them in the Premier League over the years. I've seen them at QPR. Some great players as well.
Yes, you have. Yeah.
You mentioned Zielinski at Napoli, obviously Kivor at Arsenal breaking through. Mm-hmm. Dawidovic at Verona at the centre back. I hope my pronunciation's correct.
Yeah, not too bad.
Bednarek, obviously Southampton. We've got big names, and you've got Polish players playing throughout Europe. And when you watch Poland play at these competitions, they do have quite obviously have that European sort of style of play, keeping the ball and pushing the ball towards Lewandowski. Mm-hmm. But has Michael Probierz sort of brought back that sort of playing style, that sort of European playing style, and brought a bit more national pride back to Poland?
I would say, how would I describe him? He's very much more of your European thinking. He's kind of compared within Poland circles as the Pep Guardiola for the style of football. He likes to kind of play a progressive style of football with, I suppose, most modern coaches now kind of change their tactics during the game, and you can see that take place. What we're likely to set up as is like a 3-5-2 formation, or where we'll have a solitary striker with supporting players just behind the front man. So there's a lot of adaptations in terms of the styles and the players, and I think a lot of the players will be able to adapt into those various different positions. We've seen it during qualification as well. But he does like to stick to a three-man defence predominantly. So the likes of Jakub Kivor, you will start seeing potentially Murray down that left-hand side. He's been known for doing a lot of those runs, which is a bit maybe weird to see because he's more predominantly like a centre-back. But because he's used to it in Serie A circles with his spell at Spezia, for example, I think he will do quite well at this Euros. I think the key for Poland is going to be that midfield. Zielinski is obviously going to be the creator potentially here, but we've got some really good, solid players behind him. We've got a player called Tara Romancic, who plays in the Polish National League with Jagiellona Białystok, who are currently, I believe, top of the table right now. They've been really doing fantastic things this season. We should anticipate them to be in the Champions League qualifiers for next season. But he's a player that came into the Wales game for the qualifiers and did a fantastic job. We've also got the likes of Jakub Piotrowski, who currently plays for Ludogorets in Bulgaria. He also played in that Welsh qualifier. And again, he's kind of what you would kind of see as this really tall, dynamic midfielder. Got a lot of stamina to his game. So I think from a pressing perspective, he fits in with that kind of role. Then also I have to allude to is Sebastian Szymanski, who currently plays for Fenerbahce, was on loan at Feyenoord last season and had a fantastic season there with Arne Slot. But more importantly, he's been contributing a lot of goals, and there's a lot of rumours about him potentially making a move to Serie A this season as well.
Wow.
So there's a lot of kind of good players that we've got in that midfield mix. Obviously up top, we've got the likes of, as we said, Lewandowski, Arkadiusz Milik. We've got Krzysztof Piątek, who's coming off a good season at Istanbul Başakşehir, and Karol Swiderski, who got a January transfer move to Hellas Verona, scored a few goals there to help them stay up. So again, I'm kind of happy with the current trajectory in terms of form of those players. Maybe Zielinski is the question mark right now because he's been isolated at Napoli because he wouldn't sign a contract. But that's typical Aurelio De Laurentiis there for you. But in general, yeah, look, it's very confident mood for the Polish camp right now.
Yeah, and just a couple of names, you might have mentioned them. In that sort of 3-5-2 is Zalewski at Roma. I'm sure you've been keeping eyes on him, and Frankowski of Lens, who's had a good season at Lens. And do you think those two players will be making an impact on the team as well?
In particular, I would definitely allude to Frankowski. He's had a fantastic spell with Lens in the Champions League in particular, but I knew about Frankowski from his spell at Chicago in the MLS as well. So that's where that form kind of transitioned to Lens, and they got a fantastic bargain at the same time. And he's a player that's been, League On player or team of the season, should I say. With Zalewski, he's been a bit inconsistent for the Polish national side. When Probierz came into the side, he wasn't initially picked for the squad, and then he's got himself back into the squad more recently, and he had a fantastic game against Wales in particular. So the future is definitely bright for Zalewski. I think he offers quite a dynamic ability where he can go on left and right hand side of that kind of mix wide positions, and he can do that defensive duty as well if we need to kind of get into maybe dropping in from a 3 at the back to a 4, for example, or 5. Obviously, we forget about Matty Cash as well, the newly adapted Pole as well. It'll be interesting to see because he's not necessarily played in every game since the new coach has been installed there. However, the Poles see the kind of ability that he has to offer, in particular in the game at the World Cup against France. He did really well considering he was against Mbappe for the majority of that game as well. So he offered a lot of stamina against him as well, which if it was any ordinary Pole, I think they would have struggled. But with Matty Cash, that was a godsend. So, we've got a bit of a mix mash of players that can adapt to different positions as well. So it's really promising from that point of view that we've got that adaptability.
Yeah, what I was going to say, Adam, look, you've sold it to me. I'm now backing, after all hearing about all these fantastic players, I'm backing Poland to go out there and have a real good crack at it. But then what we have to do, we have to put a full stop in it because we suddenly look at this group. Sure. We mentioned it earlier on this Euro special, and I mean, blimey, if you're going to enter into a European competition, it doesn't get tougher than this. I mean, France, I'm not sure if you saw France, Adam, but when they put out their list or their sort of their team or their squad, I mean, it's quite unreal, isn't it? When you look at the talent which is flowing through that team, I think they could probably take 2 squads and they would still compete. It's France is really a nation which is flourishing with football, and Netherlands are one of those teams that we've spoken to them that they're not confident going into this, but they're one of those teams that it's tournament football. The Netherlands are going to do bits. What I want to talk about is the Austria game, because if we're talking about Poland qualifying from this group, the Austria game is key, isn't it? And have you sort of singled out that game as being a game that must win?
I'll be brutally honest, Alex. I haven't really earmarked any game because I'm not expecting much from this Polish national side. Despite maybe giving you confidence that we would do well, I'm not really holding out for too much hope. I don't know if we'll necessarily get many points in the group stages. If we were to do it, I don't know necessarily if it would be against Austria because I've seen what they've done. They've beaten France in France as well. So, I think people have to take a back step on Austria. Don't forget they've got Ralf Rangnick at the helm. I think he's done wonders for that national side. And, they've got some really staple players. Stefan Posch, who plays for Bologna this season, he'll be in that squad, for example. Marko Arnautovic, I know we kind of berate him as the Stoke rejects, but
he's still going.
He's got a lot of tenacity about his game, and although he mocks at Inter Milan in particular for particular efforts in the Champions League against Atletico Madrid, he did eventually get that goal. And this is the thing, I think Austria are one of those sides that I think people should be wary of. Equally, for the likes of Netherlands as well. although there's an expectation that they should progress out of this group stage, I don't think it's going to be that straightforward for them. Poland, I think the best that they can do is potentially get 2 draws out of this group stages, and that's where I'm holding my hopes up. I don't know if Austria is generally going to be the straightforward game that maybe people think it will be. And, if we get a win, fantastic, Alex. But to be brutally honest, I think most Polish football fans are of the opinion that, look, we managed to get to this stage. We're quite happy that we're at the tournament, at least to be there. We know we're probably going to have a short trip in Germany, but let's enjoy it because, we can't compete against any better than the likes of France, the Netherlands, as well as Austria. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting group. I'm expecting France to win all their games, to be brutally honest. And then it'll be a close second, potentially between Austria and the Netherlands. If Poland can offer anything, maybe if we get 2 draws, then we go into that last game hoping or trying to get at least a point. And that would be great, I think, personally, because if you look at historically how Poland have performed at group stages and tournaments, we don't generally tend to go beyond the first round. In terms of Euros, the last time we did that was back in France, Euro 2016, I think it was, where we got knocked out by Portugal, the eventual winners of the tournament. And that was an unfortunate game because that was probably Poland at its prime. If you remember, like Szczesny was a younger Szczesny, Lewandowski was in his prime then. Certain Jakub Białkowski, who was playing for Borussia Dortmund back in the day. Łukasz Piszczek as well. And, we had a really good squad there back then. I wouldn't necessarily say this is the same calibre of side, though.
Listen, Adam, it's been a fantastic insight. I think you've given us a few names, people who play Football Manager, a couple of names to sign up there as well in the Polish team. But listen, Adam, we love the Anglo-Italian podcast. You guys do a great job. Are you and Rory and the rest of the guys looking forward to Euro 2024 as well?
Very much so, very much so. I think it's an interesting dynamic in terms of what we're hearing from the Italian side of things, and certainly, obviously, there's a few of our guests that we've had on our live streams that are going to be either out there, for example, embracing it from an England perspective. So yeah, it's going to be a fascinating summer, that's for sure. From our point of view, Italy, I think, will be doing quite well if they get into the quarterfinals at this stage. I think there's a kind of question mark around the Italian kind of attack at the moment, especially with Spalletti at the helm. He's trying to get things together. And he's got an exciting group of players, it's fair to say, the younger players, the likes of Calafiori, for example, Buongiorno in the defence. Again, kind of, they look like the future Italian defence. Maybe not for this tournament, but you can imagine that in a few years' time, they're going to become your likes of Bonucci's, your Chiellini's. They will become the kind of staples within that Italian squad. You look at that midfield. Again, I mean, they're blessed with so many talents like Barella, for example. Maybe this is the last tournament for Jorginho, I would say, arguably. But again, you've still got some really good players like David Fratesi, for example. And then up top, you have to look at, obviously, recently Atalanta. They have had a fantastic campaign in the Europa League. Scamacca, in particular, being the catalyst in that second half of the season. And he's been scoring lots of goals for fun. He looks like he's hungry and he wants it. Question marks about who's going to be around him at the same time, who's going to be partnering him. Will it be Chiesa? Will it be Retegui? And then we've got a few question marks. I mean, only today, Alex, we saw the preliminary squad, so there's a lot of interesting introductions, the likes of Fagioli, who's been out of the Juventus squad because he was banned because of the betting scandal. But then you've got the likes of, for example, Michael Folorunshu, who has been having a fantastic spell at Hellas Verona, bit of an unknown to the Italian national setup, but he's there, and I think he will be maybe the kind of interesting player if he gets included in the last 26 of that squad. So lots of interesting dilemmas for the national squad in Italy. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I'm still don't know who I'm going to go for as the tips for this tournament, that's for sure.
I've changed my mind so many times, but it's just to say, Monde Sportif subscribers and listeners to this particular Euro special, if you check out Adam and Rory, they do a great job on the Anglo-Italian podcast. Very listenable, very insightful on Serie A and the Premier League. But Adam, listen, it's always a pleasure. Thank you very much for giving us your time and giving us that great insight into Poland at the Euros. It's been great.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Alex.
Cheers.